The time now, 7 o'clock.
This is the CBS Morning News with Hughes Rudd in New York and Bruce Morton in Washington.
Good morning. This is Thursday, April the 22nd, and we'll bring you up to date on the leading news stories in the next hour. The head of the federal narcs will be in to talk about the country's drug problem and a huge bust they made yesterday. We'll have the latest in the argument between President Ford and Ronald Reagan over how powerful or how weak the United States is. And
Time now, 40 minutes past the hour.
A federal grand jury in New York has charged 33 people in 5 states and the District of Columbia with importing and distributing multi-million-dollar quantities of cocaine and heroin. I talked yesterday afternoon with Peter Bensinger, head of the Federal Drug Enforcement Administration, about those arrests and the current state of efforts to curb the flow of hard drugs generally. Here's some of that interview.
How big a bite does that take out of the heroin and cocaine traffic?
That remains to be seen. I think we'll need to address ourselves to the heroin and cocaine problem on a variety of levels. One level will be to try to reduce the supply at the source, to eradicate the heroin poppies in the fields, whether they're in Mexico or Southeast Asia, the Near East. And the second, and a significant, important factor, will be to hit up the major distributors, the importers, the financiers of these same narcotic substances. And this particular investigation, Syntac 8, does just that. It identifies 33 individuals who now have been not only indicted, they were arrested in 5 major cities. We had good cooperation from the FBI, the New York City Police Department, Washington, D.C. Police Department, other jurisdictions, developing information and working together to apprehend these individuals and to indict them. And that will have a significant effect, because when you immobilize an organization that can bring this product into this country and then distribute it, you've done more than just making a number of arrests at a street level. You've taken away money, you've taken away resources, you've taken away distribution. That's the role of our Drug Enforcement Administration, I think.
There was a heavy heroin epidemic in the 60s, and then everybody heaved a sigh of relief, and the problem seemed to be going away a bit. Are we now back to a new epidemic?
We've certainly seen more heroin available at the street level in 1975 and 76 than the prior 2 years, although probably less, maybe 25 to 30% less, than in 1970 and 71. The availability of heroin has increased this year, last year, over the year before. The purity level has increased. The price has tended to stay the same.
Why is that? Is that this new Mexican brown, or whatever the phrase is?
Certainly there's more heroin and more heroin available from Mexico than was the case previously. The Turkish operation and the French connection, which was broken in 1972, basically interrupted that source of supply.
Has the heroin constituency changed any? Historically, that was a drug which was used by the very poorest segments in society. It was a drug you found in the ghetto.
Yeah. I think it has changed. I think you've seen a greater availability of heroin in rural areas and suburban areas as compared to just big city areas. You've also seen an additional situation develop where I think some of the controls against some of the pills have been successful. LSD is probably less in vogue, it's less in use, it's more restricted, and it's decreased in its supply. The heroin supply will depend upon the source. It'll depend on its availability in the streets. It'll depend on price and risk. The statistics in 1972, national, indicate that for the first time in 2 decades, the general crime stats, and property crime in particular, went down when heroin became scarce. And there was a period of about a year when the level of heroin and its availability was really restricted as a result of the French connection being broken and the Turkish poppy ban. At the same time, we saw an increase in price of heroin, an increase in risk and less on the streets, and the property crime nationally, and the crime stats nationally did go down.
Federal Drug Administrator Peter Bensinger. Hughes?
Leary, who rode LSD from a Harvard instructorship all the way to the Big Rock Candy Mountain, was freed from federal prison in San Diego yesterday on a $5,000 personal bond. A federal judge in Texas ordered the release of the one-time leader of the 60s drug culture pending an appeal of his conviction in 1970 for possession of marijuana. Leary, who was serving a 10-year sentence, also was granted a parole effective in June.
You're greeted as conquering heroes in outlying villages. Leftist Muslims, led by the Morabi-Tun militia, have tightened their control on the strategic Holiday Inn, pushing several hundred yards to the east where the Phalanges are holding the Hilton Hotel as the last line of defense against the Phalanges headquarters in the port area. It is a foot-by-foot advance for the Muslim gunmen who nervously face Phalanges artillery and snipers. The death toll is estimated at least 150 people per day. Some of them are fighters like those who died in the Holiday Inn. Many residents are caught up in the unpredictable and terrifying shower of incoming artillery. Thousands of civilians are forced to sleep in their basements, and many wake up to find their homes have been hit. The artillery duels have added a new fear to life here, and a new tactic to the street fighting. Shelling has touched off a mammoth fire in the Phalanges-controlled port area, and firemen trying to control the flames are placed in severe danger by incoming shells. As Christian and Muslim forces escalate this civil war, President Frangia, the one man most able to end it by retiring early, says never. Mike Lee, CBS News, Beirut.
Do you have persistent dandruff, itching, flaking? These are the leading anti-dandruff shampoos. Yet only one contains the anti-dandruff ingredient most widely prescribed by doctors, Selsun Blue. Yes, only Selsun Blue contains the anti-dandruff ingredient most widely prescribed by doctors. Perhaps that's why Selsun Blue is one of America's fastest growing anti-dandruff shampoos. Do you have dandruff? Selsun Blue helps to really control dandruff with regular use.
Someday, there'll be a small, inexpensive device available that will help pilots and ground controllers prevent mid-air collisions. Once it's on board all aircraft, it'll tell a pilot how to change his course whenever there's a threat of collision. That someday is today at Honeywell. Write us at Honeywell. We'll tell you how it works.
For some time, Soviet diplomats in this country have been harassed in various ways. The Soviet missions in New York has been shot at. The Soviet establishments have been bombed. And just today, a pipe bomb was found at a Soviet trading agency in New York. The Soviet emissaries formally have protested all this to the State Department. Now it appears the Soviet government is striking back. U.S. Embassy employees in Moscow have been receiving late-night threatening phone calls, and the embassy there was evacuated today because of a telephone bomb threat. Afterwards, the United States State Department filed a formal protest with the Kremlin, charging Soviet authorities with organizing a harassment campaign. Ever since Soviet-supplied Cuban troops helped defeat pro-Western forces in Angola, the United States has warned that those troops should not intervene elsewhere in southern Africa, particularly Rhodesia. And in recent days, Secretary of State Kissinger has said that if the warning is ignored, the United States would retaliate. Well, the question has remained unanswered, however, as to just what the United States might be prepared to do, whether indeed the Kissinger threat is an empty one. We have reports from Ike Pappas at the Pentagon and Robert Pierpoint at the White House.
The Pentagon says the Joint Chiefs are now going over plans for possible military action against Cuba, but sources termed as extremely remote the possibility there would be an invasion of the island to back demands Fidel Castro cease his military moves in Africa. The most likely initial action, they indicated, would be a show of the flag by the United States, that is, the moving of several American warships to the waters near Cuba as a symbolic warning to Castro the United States means business. And if this didn't work, then other options, including a quarantine or a blockade of the island, would be contemplated. The Pentagon said that no ship or troop movements have been ordered. the United States is keeping a close watch on the 12,000-man Cuban force that took Angola. Pentagon sources said that there are no indications that the force will be moved to assist rebels in Mozambique, although a handful of Cuban advisors are with those rebels right now. For the time being, then, there is more talk than action regarding United States intentions. Ike Pappas, CBS News, the Pentagon.
President Ford discussed those warnings against Cuba with a group of senators here yesterday, backing up Kissinger's implied threats and adding, quote, "We mean it." Just what he means, however, is not clear. The president would not reveal to the senators what options are under review, though it was pointed out to CBS News that the United States has very little, if any, economic or political clout against Cuba, so that leaves the military options. There's also the question this presidential election year of whether the Ford administration might be trying to prove it is as tough on communists as Ronald Reagan claims it should be. That question was put to one of the senators who attended the session with the president, and his answer was, "I'm a Democrat, so I should not comment on Republican politics." Robert Pierpoint, CBS News, at the White House.
Soviet Foreign Minister Gromyko has dismissed as fairy tales reports that the Kremlin would help Rhodesia's black nationalists. Gromyko said in London that the Soviet Union was working with the West on a constructive solution to the crisis in southern Africa. He did not elaborate, but at about the same time, South Africa announced that it will withdraw all its forces from southern Angola by Saturday. It said Angola has guaranteed protection of a South African hydroelectric project and other interests along the Angolan border. In Britain's House of Commons today, 314 members of the ruling Labour Party voted on a successor to Prime Minister Wilson. As expected, no one received a majority of the vote, and there will be further balloting next week. Bob Simon reports from London.
The front runner in today's first ballot was Employment Secretary Michael Foot, the champion of the Labour Party's left wing. He's been in the House of Commons 30 years, but only attained cabinet rank in 1974 when Harold Wilson needed someone to placate the unions. Foot's relationship with the unions has been described as a mystic bond. If Foot becomes prime minister, there will be dancing in Britain's factories and panic in the boardrooms. But despite his strong showing today, which was expected, it's considered unlikely that he'll win in the end. The favorite is still Foreign Secretary Jim Callahan, who came in second today. He's had the distinct advantage this week of being too busy to campaign, preoccupied as he was with affairs of state. But he's been less successful in the diplomatic world than in the rough and tumble of party politics. He scored his greatest public relations triumph in 1969 in Northern Ireland, when against the Army's advice, he took a walk through the riot-torn Catholic bogside of Londonderry. Sonny Jim, the great conciliator he's been called, and he probably stands a better chance of holding the divided Labour Party together than any other candidate. The only surprise today came after the vote when Home Secretary Roy Jenkins, who came in third, resigned from the race. So did Energy Secretary Anthony Wedgwood Benn, who came in fourth, leaving Chancellor of the Exchequer Dennis Healey the only other candidate to remain. Like Winston Churchill, Healey promises nothing but blood, sweat, and tears. The battle against inflation, he has said, is no less serious than the wartime battle Churchill fought and won in 1945. But as spokesman for the government's tough economic policies, Healey has made many enemies, particularly in the Labour Party's left wing. Political observers will be very surprised if Healey survives next Tuesday's second ballot, which it now appears will either be won by Callahan or lead to a third ballot between Callahan and Foot. Bob Simon, CBS News, London.
A San Francisco architect, Kenneth Householder, has won the Irish Sweepstakes jackpot prize of $800,000. The 58-year-old Householder, the 8th American to win the sweepstakes, said, "It's unbelievable." The Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped 7 points today to close slightly above 1,000. Volume on the New York Stock Exchange was 22.5 million shares. The average price per share slid 19 cents on the New York Exchange, 3 cents on the American.
You can see that Seville by Cadillac is a new kind of American luxury car. But to really appreciate the Seville experience, you have to drive it. Feel its response, corner it, maneuver it. But here in the driver's seat is where you realize Seville is the luxury car you've had in mind all along. That's why your Cadillac dealer wants you to drive Seville for yourself, by yourself. It's the only way.
I'd like you to take a close look at this bread. The color is light brown, and the texture, a unique blend of whole grain wheat and whole grain rye. There's bran, defatted flaxseed, and other nutritious ingredients, including pure golden honey. This isn't ordinary bread. It's Roman meal, the good-tasting light brown bread. Roman meal, natural whole grain goodness. The Roman Meal Company thought you'd like to know.
According to the FBI, crime was up again last year, but there was some good news, if you can call it that, in all the somber statistics. All crime was up 9%, but that means that the rate of increase actually is down. The year before it had increased 18%, and murder was down 1%. But rape was up 1%, aggravated assault and robbery up 5%. Crime in big cities was up by 8%, up 10% in the suburbs and 9% in rural areas. Federal officials said today they've smashed one of the biggest heroin smuggling rings in the world. They said the operation relied on unsuspecting U.S. Air Force crews, which flew the heroin from Thailand to bases in California, Virginia, and North Carolina. 14 persons have been arrested, among them several active and retired servicemen. Officials said the ring, over at least 18 months, brought in $100 million worth of heroin before it was broken up. 201 years ago, Benjamin Franklin founded the Postal Service, and it's been helping ever since to keep the country together. Now the current Postmaster General, Benjamin Franklin Baylor, is struggling to keep the service from falling apart itself. Baylor recently called for a reevaluation of his troubled organization, and Jim Kilpatrick reports.
When the Postal Service says it's reevaluating, that usually means you can expect less service. Monday, the second...
Turn to the Ford campaign, but he said he would not resign until after he is exonerated.
My position was that the President of the United States, a man that I've known for 15 years, that I love and admire and think is one of the greatest presidents and leaders that I've ever known in my life, he told me, when I left him on the airplane, he said, Bo, I want you to come back after you're exonerated. And I told Dick Cheney, as far as I'm concerned, that's where it stands. And unless the president has changed his mind, that's where it stands.
The former Secretary of the Army left the studio with his family and said he would meet with President Ford in 3 or 4 days. Bruce Hall, CBS News, Atlanta.
The Democrats have shifted their attention to Wisconsin and New York, the scenes of the next Democratic primaries. Both states will vote on April 6th with 140 delegates up for grabs. Udall has a head start in Wisconsin, but Carter is trying hard to catch up. Here's a report.
Jimmy Carter's run-everywhere strategy keeps him almost constantly on the move. It must be jolting at times to mind and body, but so far it's paid off.
We've now been through 14 states that have chosen delegates. I've been in all of them as best I could, and I believe I've got the right candidate. I've come in second 3 times and first 8 times.
In Milwaukee, for a brief meeting with Mayor Henry Meyer, Carter's shoe showed the wear the candidate seems to always hide behind that almost ever-present smile. Later, at a news conference, he turned aside criticism that he is vague on some issues and not meeting his obligation to the voters by failing to spell out his planned reorganization of the federal government.
It's obvious that the voters do trust me to do what I tell them. And it's obvious that the voters have enough common sense to know that I can't spell out the ultimate detailed picture of what the government will be like after it's reorganized. Nobody could do that. And I think the voters have enough common sense to know that.
Carter is seen as an underdog in this state. He's behind in organization and time spent in Wisconsin. But he continues to display that same confident tone that has marked his campaign from the beginning. For this state, he predicts a first or second place finish. Ed Bradley, CBS News, Milwaukee.
After 14 months of home rule, the D.C. city government does not seem to rate much praise from district residents. A poll just completed by Georgetown University has the results. Eyewitness News correspondent Maureen Bunyan reports.
The Georgetown University poll was the first one done on D.C. government, and it shows that D.C. residents rate both the mayor and the city council low in their job performances. 830 persons were surveyed by telephone. Of those, 62% rated Mayor Washington's work unfavorably. 30% gave him a favorable mark. The others were not sure. Where the city council is concerned, 62% said the council was not doing a good job, 23% said everything was fine, 15% weren't sure. The mayor seemed to get the most approval from whites and from men. The council got its highest ratings from men and from people aged 30 to 39. The poll was done at random and matched the characteristics of D.C. residents by age, race, and sex. The Georgetown analysts say that the results of the survey fall into a pattern that can be found all over the country, and that is simply that people have become very disenchanted with political institutions. I'm Maureen Bunyan, Eyewitness News.
Muhammad Ali has a new opponent lined up, a heavyweight wrestler who is also a karate champ. Sounds very interesting. Mike Wolf will have details when we come back.
It's lunchtime. Hey, is this new? The latest Olivetti, the Lexicon 90. See, this interchangeable typing ball stays in place. Mine runs all over the place. The ribbon cartridge takes carbon or fabric. Smart. It's made in the good old USA. You can get an 18-inch carriage or a decimal tabulator that almost stops headaches. And I have to keep backspacing? My boss better be in. Hello, Freddie. This is Betty. I'm ready. Call Olivetti.
The Lexicon 90. It's ready. Call Olivetti.
My pantyhose don't have a panty.
Designer John Kloss for Burlington gives you a sleek tricot panty that's part of the hose, so they really fit smoothly.
Burlington! My pantyhose aren't exciting.
Designer John Kloss for Burlington gives you sheer leg shades with a surprise of color over the hips.
Burlington!
Burlington pantyhose available at Garfinkel's.
Interstate Van Lines, professional moving, cross-town, cross-state, or cross-country. Top hat service from Interstate.
Well, it's time for sports, and yesterday you might remember that Mike Wolf told us about a heavyweight wrestler who was also a karate champion who wanted to fight Muhammad Ali. And today I understand there's some more to that story, and I didn't really think that you were serious. He was serious, but I didn't think that Muhammad Ali would be
Some of his people aren't too crazy about this, but they announced today in New York that Ali, on June 25th in Tokyo, will fight Antonio Inoki. We talked about him yesterday. He is the heavyweight wrestling champion of Japan and also is a 7th degree black belt in karate. Now, they have signed to fight June 25th. Muhammad Ali and Antonio Inoki. Ali continues his announcement-a-day routine, I think. But here's the kicker. Ali, no dummy. $6.1 million he's going to get. Can you believe that? And Inoki will probably go down as the highest-paid opponent that Ali has ever fought. He gets $2 million guaranteed from the international television rights and all of the gate receipts, all the live gate receipts. Now, I'm going to tell you something, folks. That's a lot of money. Yesterday, we told you, it hadn't been confirmed, Ali would wear 8-ounce gloves, and Inoki would be bare-fisted and also is allowed to kick. Now, I don't know about all this. June 25th, you heard it here. Right here is where you heard it. Anyhow, continuing along, the NCAA playoffs begin, of course, the semifinal round on Saturday, and Sonny Jurgensen is going to be in Philadelphia to give us some reports on that. Indiana is a choice over UCLA, and Michigan, surprisingly, the choice over unbeaten Rutgers. That ought to be interesting to see. Those two will play each other on Saturday, and then the winner, of course, will play for the championship on Monday in Philadelphia. In baseball, spring training continues, and we're going to give you a little clinic here. One of the great home run hitters in the National League's name is Dave Kingman, and he's with the New York Mets. Now, you youngsters, take a look at this. Notice how he holds the bat still and level. A little clinic here. It's a Mike Wolf clinic. Notice his feet well spread, and he's comfortable. Gets in there and gets settled. Watch the follow-through. That's important. And watch now as he keeps his eye on the ball. He's not looking at anything else. And that's why he hits a lot of home runs, okay? Tonight, the Bullets play at home. They begin 4 games in 4 nights. They play Portland. Bill Walton will be in town. Very quickly, let's give you the results at Bowie today. The double was 2 and 8, paid $220. The feature was won by number 6, Isle of Charm, for $12. And the 9th race triple, 5, 7, and 6, paid $760.80. And the Capitals are idle. This is Mike Wolf.
Okay. There is a musical What's Happening Tonight at the Wesley Seminary for opera fans. Soloists will be singing parts of Faust and other famous operas beginning at 7:30 at the seminary on Massachusetts Avenue in Northwest Washington.
Hi, I'm Pat Collins. Doctors at Spring Grove Mental Hospital, the place from which Arthur Good escaped, say that Good never belonged in the minimum security facility and that authorities knew it. I'll have that story on Eyewitness News at 6. JC will be back in a moment.
Presenting Tiger Paws, Uniroyal's full line of economy price tires, radial, belted, and 4-ply. For a limited time at special low prices, like $17 for an A7813 4-ply Tiger Paw, plus $1.74 federal excise tax. Prices available at all Uniroyal tire and auto stores. Check your Uniroyal dealer for his prices. Only Uniroyal makes the Tiger Paw.
Available at Stidham Tire Company, 18 locations to serve you.
It doesn't cramp my style.
Doesn't cramp my style.
What doesn't cramp my style? Phillips, milk of magnesia. When I have constipation, I rely on Phillips. It really works, and it doesn't interfere with my day.
Unlike most laxatives, Phillips formula puts your natural body water to work, drawing it to where it's needed to soften and lubricate. Relieves constipation in hours, usually without cramps. Phillips, regular, chocolate, or mint.
It really works, and it doesn't cramp your style.
Why don't you try a new Mariner dinner? Fish dinner? And a hamburger place?
Burger Chef introduces the Mariner. 2 tender deep-sea fillets, fresh cooked, hot and crisp, with fries and all the salad you want. Delicious.
Mmm. What do you think, Mom? Pretty good cook, sis.
Catch the Mariner, only at Burger Chef.
You get more to life at Burger Chef.
A 12-year-old boy has been convicted of murdering one of Washington's socialites, Gladys Worlick. The boy was part of a gang. The gang went around streets and indiscriminately mugged elderly residents in the DuPont Circle neighborhood. 2 other youngsters, an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old, have also been charged with Mrs. Worlick's murder. A citizens group today did what the D.C. Planning Office has been unable to do, come up with a municipal planning survey for the DuPont Circle community. Eyewitness News correspondent Eldridge Spearman reports.
The survey is described as a profile of this Northwest Washington neighborhood in the midst of Embassy Row. Its boundaries are 310 acres squeezed between 15th Street on the east, N Street on the south, 23rd Street in the west, and Florida Avenue to the north. The profile shows that DuPont Circle is the most dense community in the nation's capital. Nearly 70 people per acre of space as compared to 26 per acre in Foggy Bottom and the city average of 30 per acre. DuPont Circle could be called a diplomatic circle or international square. There are 30 chanceries, 19 embassies, and 300 national organizations in this neighborhood said to be ethnically, economically, and educationally diverse. More people are employed in DuPont Circle, 20,000, than live there, 19,000. The citizens' profile sees a growing menace to the community, the destruction of large Victorian housing for high-rise commercial development, and one area resident calls the traffic problem frightening. 30,000 cars travel daily through the circle. The DuPont Circle profile is expected to serve as a background resource booklet for the D.C. Municipal Planning Office and Zoning Commission when those agencies consider reshaping DuPont Circle. The profile was put together by the North DuPont Community Association. It's not only a guide for municipal planning, it's also a community resource and historical guide. Volunteer workers made the study that could have cost about $30,000 if the city had contracted the project. The volunteers did it in 4 months for $300. I'm Eldridge Spearman, Eyewitness News.
There is an open house going on in southeast Washington. This one is unusual because police are holding it for victims of the Stings burglars. Our Eyewitness News correspondent Mike Buchanan is there. Mike, what is happening now?
The stolen property recovered by the family, Angelo Lasagna, Rico Rigatoni, and their brothers, those involved in Operation Sting, is on public display. Sting recovered about 4,000 stolen items. About 400 of those items have not been identified. They're here today at the police department's property control office. Most of the people who have taken the tour this afternoon, very frankly, they've been disappointed. They came here hoping to find what they lost, but they haven't seen it. And they expect to see more goods. But I'll tell you something, most of the goods have already been identified. We'll have more later in Eyewitness News. JC?
Thank you. That is Eyewitness News at 5:30. I'm J.C. Hayward. See you tomorrow. Stay with us, though, because Eyewitness News at 6 begins now with Max Robinson and the other fella.
Here are the top stories coming up on Eyewitness News. An escaped mental patient was formally charged today with the murder of one young boy and the kidnapping of another, Pat Collins reports. D.C. police are holding an open house today to help robbery victims claim the property that was recovered in the sting. Mike Buchanan has a live report. Federal agents say they've broken up a big smuggling ring that flew heroin from Thailand to the Washington area. Chris Gordon has details. Muhammad Ali has agreed to fight a Japanese karate expert. Mike Wolf has that story. A Washington real estate company has agreed to stop assuming that men need maid service while women do not. Gordon Peterson reports. And Henry Tenenbaum finds that there's a gold mine to be found in selling bicentennial junk. These stories and more as the Eyewitness News Service continues now with Max Robinson and Gordon Peterson.
Good evening. A 21-year-old escaped mental patient was arraigned today and charged with murdering an 11-year-old Falls Church boy and kidnapping a Towson youngster. Arthur Good was formerly accused of killing Kenneth Dawson of Falls Church and abducting Billy Ortiz of Towson. The big puzzle: why did one boy live while another died? Eyewitness News correspondent Mike Buchanan reports.
21-year-old Arthur Frederick Good III of Hyattsville was brought this afternoon into Fairfax County Circuit Court. Good was soft-spoken, timid, relaxed. Commonwealth's attorney Robert Horan cited Good's criminal record. He said Good was charged in March of last year with sexually assaulting a Prince George's County boy, and while on bond, Good allegedly committed another similar attack. He pled guilty to both